Block 320 back in May of last year.
All right, thank you. Well, that puts it in perspective. But also, the body-worn cameras seem to include, I think, what is labeled as a narcotics body-worn camera. I'm not sure what officer it is. It's rather lengthy. It involves a lot of time where Mr. Floyd is in a conference room by himself, but also has a video of a paramedic dealing with him and checking his blood pressure. That was not part, or did I just miss it? Was that part of the September 11th motion hearing, or has that been supplied since then?
Your Honor, that was again when the parties were all joined, and Mr. Tao's motion.
Okay.
And so, I believe that it was previously submitted as well.
Okay, and I think the motion was basically to talk about Mr. Floyd's manner and appearance during the arrest. And so the court made the ruling on that basis. Now we are at a different stage. Mr. Nelson, I'm going to ask you to approach the lectern and tell me why I should admit it and on what basis.
Thank you, Your Honor. We are point when the paramedics were checking Mr. Floyd's blood pressure, they specifically told him that his blood pressure was so high that he was in danger of having a stroke or heart attack at that point. And obviously, in this particular case, one of the primary cause of death is obviously cardiopulmonary arrest. So just to kind of work backwards, Your Honor, and I think that that's what the court was ultimately alluding to. The entire arrest in May of 2019, just over a year prior to Mr. Floyd's death, is remarkably similar in multiple ways from one to the next, from the May 6th of 2019 to the May 25th of 2020 arrest. Beginning with literally the initial approach of officers and how the officers reacted to Mr. Floyd in that circumstance. In both of these cases, Mr. Floyd is in a vehicle. In one, it's a traffic stop, and the other, he's already parked. Officers approach, and the officers notice that Mr. Floyd begins acting furtively, hiding his hands. He's refusing to show his hands. Both officers, in both incidents, draw their weapons and I guess, escalate the use of authority or force in that regard. Mr. Floyd struggles. They struggle to get Mr. Floyd out of the car. Mr. Floyd immediately claims that he has previously been shot in both incidents. Mr. Floyd, again, struggles to get out of the car. He appears to resist their efforts to handcuff him. And he starts saying some of the exact same things that he says in this particular case, in the May 25th of 2020 incident, including calling out for his mama. He claims to have been shot, and he begins, this crying, kind of erratic behavior. All of Mr. Floyd's behaviors at that point are identical. Now, in the May 6th of 2019 incident, officers actually observe Mr. Floyd begin to put what they suspect are controlled substances in his mouth. And they, again, they threaten to tase him. They say, spit it out repeatedly. Mr. Floyd refuses to comply. And he obviously takes these controlled substances. A search of the vehicle in the May 6th of 2019 incident reveals a large quantity of a variety of controlled substances. At the time of the original motion in this case, we had taken screenshots from the arrest in May of 2020 showing what we believed to be controlled substances in the mouth of Mr. Floyd at that time.
Well, in fact, I think I stated that in one of our hearings, whether it was June or September, and the court or the state at that time, before item 51 was found in the squad, I believe corrected me and said we don't know that to be the case, that that is a pill or spit or something else.
That's precisely it, Your Honor, and that was that. They said we don't know. That could have been, could have been gum. It could have been something else. We didn't know with definite positivity. I don't think anybody could say with definite positivity at that point that that's what was in his mouth at that motion here. Now there are so many other similarities between these two incidents, including officers believing that Mr. Floyd was under the influence in both cases. In the May of 2020 incident, Officers King and Lane are asking him immediately upon taking him out of the car, "What are you on? What are you taking?" They suspect that he is under the influence of something. They don't know what. What are you taking? They notice a white foam around his mouth, or a white residue or something around his mouth. That same observation is also made by officers in the May 6th of 2019. So there are all of these remarkable similarities. The difference is, the primary difference is that in the May 6th of 2019 incident, when they put Mr. Floyd into the squad car, he never makes a claim of claustrophobia. He gets into the squad car and he continues kind of the crying and erratic behavior in the squad car. As his body ingests or processes the controlled substances he took, you can see his demeanor change in the cameras, where he goes to an almost incoherent state while he is in the police station in the May of 2019 state, resulting in the police calling paramedics to the scene, and ultimately the hospitalization of Mr. Floyd. And there are the associated medical records from HCMC, or what was then known as HCMC, about Mr. Floyd's hospitalization. Those records indicate that on that particular day he took 7 or 8 pills prior to being arrested by the police. The paramedics in that instance, right, when they originally respond to the precinct in May of 2019, they specifically tell him, they're monitoring his vitals, and they tell him, "You're at risk of having a heart attack or stroke." And his medical records also clearly demonstrate that he has a history of high blood pressure and hypertension. He had been prescribed medications for those. So you've got a person who is being specifically told this behavior, or presumably this behavior, is putting you at risk of having a heart attack or a stroke. So when we look at the exceptions to the general 404B exclusion, we look at common plan or scheme, right? Is this something that is so similar? Is this just that this is his modus operandi of when he gets arrested by the police? Particular when he's in possession of controlled substances. So you look at this, and the similarities are incredible. I mean, it's the exact same behavior in 2 incidents, almost exactly 1 year apart. You also look at it under habit. Is this one's regular response to a repeated specific situation? So you have 2 repeated specific situations. You look at intent, a state of mind which an act was done consciously. The ingestion of controlled substances upon police interaction